Hello and welcome to Attract More Abundance Now. My name is Kitty Coy, and I am so excited to be here today to help you learn how you can attract more abundance. Just in case you don't know me well, a little bit more about me. I am the manifestation mentor. I'm actually a neuroscientist turned magnetic mind coach. So I love working with ambitious women to help them turn their minds into a magnet using neuroscience so they can attract and receive whatever it is that they want and expand into their next level of success. When I was a neuroscientist, I was a behavioral neurophysiologist, which is a fancy way of saying I studied how the structure of your brain affects your behavior and how your behavior actually changes the structure of your brain. All good for anybody who has to jump out. You're totally fine, no problem. And my greatest superpower is I'm really good at researching and investigating very complicated things and explaining them in a step by step, easy to understand, easy to take action on way. That's my secret superpower. I did that with neuroscience. I'm doing that with manifestation for you now. I'm so excited to share these things in a way that you can take action in any given moment. And my mission is to create a world where women are financially independent and no one ever needs to ask permission to spend money or make a purchase that feels in alignment for them. I think a lot of us live in a world, even if it's not a partner that we're asking permission for, we might be asking our pocketbook or our checking account for permission to do the things that we want to do. So, the whole purpose of this presentation is to demystify the challenges that prevent us from manifesting more money. Because it's oftentimes that I find at least people struggle with manifesting one of three categories. Either it's health or wealth or relationships. But I hear from people all the time, well, I can manifest a parking spot. I can manifest XYZ. Why can't I manifest more money? And so we're going to talk about the energetics and the science behind money and how you can take the right actions in an energy that's inefficient for manifesting and not be able to manifest what it is that you really want. And there's nothing wrong with you for doing that. And we'll give you some tools on how you can shift that. All right. So the biggest reason why we get stuck in this place is your brain is wired to survive and not thrive. And this comes from our caveman days, even though, that was many, many years ago and we've evolved a lot since then. Basically, evolutionarily, our brain hasn't fully evolved. So it is hardwired for survival, which means safety, which is just experiencing the same thing you've experienced again and again and again. Because if you survived it once, surely you can survive it again, says your brain. And so what happens is your brain actually works against you and it wants you to stay stuck. It wants you to stay safe. Your brain works to keep you exactly where you are right now because it knows that you're able to survive that. Here's the trick about safe. Safe is simply what you've survived before. So it could be a narcissistic relationship or toxic shame or whatever that is. Whenever you experience that and you survive, it is now coded as safe in your system. Where having unlimited abundance, if you've never experienced it, isn't coded as safe in your system yet. So in that way, your brain is hardwired to keep you stuck. So if you want to receive more abundance, there's a couple, there's really three principles, and we're going to talk about the first one today in great detail, is how do you reprogram your brain to receive more abundance? How do you increase your vessel or container of receiving? We all have a certain amount of good and a certain amount of money that we allow ourselves to have in our life. And if your vessel for receiving is the size of a coffee mug and you have a fire hose, if you keep fire hosing that coffee mug, you will break that mug. And in that way, your system, your body, your brain will not allow you to receive more than your vessel can hold. So in order to receive more, we need to increase your vessel. And I really think this is so interesting because when I first tuned into it, and there's some really fun practices we can do, not in the container of this webinar, but when I tuned into it, the reason I mentioned the coffee mug is this is how big my vessel for receiving is. It was the size of a coffee mug, and that's it. And so I worked to increase that vessel bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's a mason jar that's big, like big enough that I can stand in it. So in that way, I increased my vessel for receiving and allowed myself to receive more. And calming your nervous system. I have a whole other webinar that I do all about how to calm your nervous system to receive more abundance called Turning Anxiety into Abundance. If you're interested in getting signed up, that webinar is March 17th. I want to say noon Mountain Time off the top of my head. If you're curious, I'm always happy to, you can just drop anxiety in the chat and I will sign up for that webinar as well. So you can learn about calming your nervous system. But let's dig into how to reprogram your brain. And pardon me, I have a ton of allergies right now as the trees are waking up. So, all right, your brain filters information to prove your beliefs and worst fears right. Whatever you believe is true becomes true for you. So let's dig into how that works. Your brain's filter is called the reticular activating system, and its job is to prevent overwhelm because your brain is bombarded with information at this very high rate. And in order to prevent overwhelm, your brain only allows you to receive 0.000003% of all the information that exists, which means 99.999997% of all information is blocked. And by that, what I mean is that in every single moment, all of your skin cells and your proprioceptors can feel where your clothes, for example, where your clothes are touching you. They can feel the temperature of the room. They can see the lights, then hear all the sounds, smells, tastes. All of that information is coming to your senses all at once. And like every hair cell on your body, every skin cell has these proprioceptors that's sending information to your brain. And so your brain would literally break if it had to process all this information. You'd be in a catatonic state because it's just too much. So to prevent overwhelm, your brain actually filters out the information that it views to be not relevant. This is the reason why babies don't like shoes, is because when babies, their reticular activating system, their brain's filter isn't fully set up yet. And so when you put socks and shoes on these little babies, it's a bunch of information that's flooding their brain at once. And it's the same reason why if you get a new watch, at first you're like, oh my God, this watch is so heavy. I can feel it all the time because that information hasn't been blocked out by your reticular activating system yet, your RAS. Anyways, and so, but then eventually you wear this watch long enough that you feel naked without it. Again, these are just examples of how your brain filters information. And we know all of these numbers because they did a study in the 1950s, which found that in any given moment, in any given second, your brain is receiving 5 billion with a B bits of information every single second. Anybody want to take a guess at how much your brain can actually process in a second? 126 bits. So this is where the 0.0003% of information that's allowed through the filter, and then the 99.999997% that's blocked out is all of this information. And you can train your brain what to allow through the filter and what gets blocked. And so I can only imagine if in the 1950s, before, I mean, television was a thing, but it was only a couple hours and it was black and white, and then there was no programming 24/7, let alone the thousands of channels we have access to right now. There was no cell phones. Billboards were kind of a thing, but you weren't being marketed to every minute. If in the 1950s we had 5 billion bits of information coming at us per second, I can only imagine how many, like, hundreds of billions of bits of information is coming to us now because there is constant information. And I guarantee our brain's ability to process has also increased, but I would bet they're actually redoing this study right now. I'm excited to see the data. I would bet that these numbers both went up, but in relationship to each other. And we have this unconscious addiction to scarcity. We want abundance, but all we can see sometimes is being hyper focused on all of the money that goes out, or we get hyper focused on not enough money coming in. It's as if we're kinking the hose, but then watching just like one little drip at a time come out, wishing that the hose was unkinked. And media and news really reinforces this idea that there's scarcity. We live in a naturally abundant universe. Think about nature. An entire forest can grow from one seed. That's abundance. Think about how many grains of sand there are in all of the beaches of the world, how many drops of water are in the ocean, how many molecules of oxygen there are in the air. We live in a naturally abundant universe, but we are conditioned to believe that there is not enough. And that literally changes our emotions, our beliefs, and our nervous system to be stuck in this place of scarcity. And this does two things for us. It actually blocks our ability to see when we're hyper focused on too much money coming out or not enough money coming in. It blocks our brain's ability to see money coming in, and it actually blocks our ability to receive more money energetically. And so scarcity and fear have a frequency of about 100 hertz, and abundance is a frequency of 888 hertz. So you can see, let me take you to a visual description of this because you're surprised, you're manifesting all the time. But when we're in this place of guilt, shame, apathy, grief, fear, we are manifesting more of these emotions. And if you're not familiar with this chart, this is from Dr. David Hawkins, and he wrote about it in a book called Power versus Force. He calls it the map of consciousness, but I just call it the color chart of emotions. And a couple things to note is notice that there's numbers on the left hand side. Each number is frequency in hertz, and it's associated with a specific emotion. So shame is 20, apathy is 50, fear is 100, courage is 200, reason is 400, love is 500, peace is 600, and enlightenment. So when we're wanting to manifest more of what we consciously desire, what we're saying is we need to move out of these lower frequencies. And by the way, there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. All emotions have a place, a space, a reason. Emotions are our guidance system. So when you're in these places, you're either actively processing through them or it's showing you somewhere that your life is out of alignment. But if you want to start manifesting your wildest dreams, we need to move from fear to a place of love or above. You actually, when you start manifesting, so I don't know if you, it's easier to see on this because of the arrow placement. It's easier to see on this left hand side. A frequency of 500 hertz is where negativity starts effortlessly dissolving. So this is where you start manifesting your wildest dreams and crazy and amazing things start coming to you when you can raise your and people will say in like raise your vibration. This is what they mean by that. It is increasing your frequency, which is driven by emotion because everything has a frequency. Each thought, each belief, each emotion has a frequency. And so your thoughts, your beliefs and emotions are all energies that are being projected out into the field. So I like to say, assume everyone can read your mind because they can. And note that have you ever walked in a room where you're like, you could cut the tension with a knife? We can sense people's emotions, whether we realize it consciously or not. So, we already mentioned this before, but whatever you believe comes true becomes true because it is part of how your brain filters information. It can only see information that proves you right. And in fact, your subconscious has two jobs: keep you alive and prove you right. So if you believe that I'm not worthy and when I'm worthy, then I'll get money, that becomes true for you. I love working with things like mantras and affirmations. Money flows to me easily, frequently, and abundantly. Great affirmation. But this works on the conscious level. And unfortunately, all of your money blocks and limitations are subconscious. A quick refresher on consciousness levels. Your conscious mind is what's ever in your attention at this moment, which honestly is very little. It's mostly me speaking, and then maybe if there's something going on in the background. But you are 98% subconscious. Your subconscious is your autonomic nervous system, your heartbeat, your respiration, your body language, your body posture, your emotions, beliefs, all of your limitations, they're all subconscious. And so there's this catch 22 that you're like, say these affirmations, money comes to me with ease. But if your nervous system and your beliefs are actually and those are in the subconscious, we need to be able to work in your conscious mind and your subconscious mind to allow you to receive more abundance. So, truly, to change the brain's filter, we'll talk about the easy way to do this, but to really upgrade your money belief system, you need a new way of orienting to the world. A different way to say that is you need a new identity in relationship to money. And you need to shift some deeply rooted beliefs that are keeping you stuck. They're keeping you stuck where you are instead of in alignment with where you want to be and what you want to do. So I use neuroscience to do that, to support my clients to get there farther and faster. And this is because, like I said, the second problem is your brain blocks you from actually being able to receive. And I just said this a minute ago, your subconscious mind will do everything in its power to work to prove you right. So when you have these beliefs and thoughts around scarcity, it actually prevents you from being able to receive more abundance. And the problem, this is where it gets really sticky. When we're doing everything right and we're trying really hard, but what we want doesn't happen, like we really want to manifest this thing, but it doesn't come through, immediately we turn it on ourselves and say, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me that I can't do this thing? And then instead of just going for what we want, we then start chasing our tail, trying to fix ourselves, which just further reinforces the belief like, when I'm worthy, then I can receive more abundance. But the problem is, you could spend the rest of your life working on feeling more worthy, and that just prevents you from actually going for what you want. Because when you're a problem solver, everything's a problem. Just like how when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when you have this belief, when XYZ happens or changes, then I can insert thing here. That is a problem solving mindset that actually prevents you from being able to manifest. So, really quickly, we're going to continue to dig into the major challenges and the solutions around manifesting more money in your life. So, what's so interesting around manifestation is the problem isn't anything about what you think. We tend to orient and be like, what do I need to fix about myself? When I fix this thing, then I can have what I want. But really, the problem is that money needs an assignment. Money needs a job. It needs to know what it's gonna you want to do with it. And most of us actually have no idea what we want. We think we know what we want, but oftentimes what we want is a reaction. It's the opposite of what we don't want. For example, we want abundance because we don't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. We want love because we're lonely. We want health because we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's so interesting because when we dig into the rationale, why do you want what you want? Most people find that what they want is an illusion. And really, money is an illusion because you don't want money. You don't want a swimming pool of money so you can have the money. We have this idea, and this is the illusion of money. You think that money will make you feel safe or secure or stable. But in reality, you want whatever the money is going to get you. And so whatever you want to manifest needs to be a real desire. And by real desire, I mean it's something that you want to be, do, have, experience that thing because you want it. There is no secondary intentions, there's no hidden agenda. which is why I added a picture of a sailboat here because a couple years ago, I was really focused. I was like, when I have the money, then I can go on this trip to Greece. And it basically, we were getting all ready to go. And then we went and looked at plane tickets and all these things, priced it out. And it was something we chose not to invest in that time. And I'd been wanting to go to this sailboat event. It's basically Yacht Week in Greece, where a bunch of sailboats get together. I've been wanting to go for a decade. And so when we had to we chose not to invest in it that time because it simply didn't make sense for us in that moment. I got really clear that I was going to be really intentional about receiving whatever I needed to receive so I could go on that trip. And I ended up through getting very clear, working on my money mindset, all of these things. And so all, by the way, all of the tools I used, I'm going to provide to you as a thank you for attending this talk. So don't worry about that. All of these tools that I started using, I attracted $8,000 outside of my business in money I found on the sidewalk, money people gave me for no reason. It was crazy. And I also attracted $14,000 inside of my business for a total of $20,000 in, I think it was like 8 months. I was able to attract it. And you know why? Because what I wanted, I stopped focusing on the money and I just focused on the trip. I really wanted to sail. I really wanted to go to Greece because I wanted to go to Greece. There's no secondary intention. There's nothing behind it besides the fact that I wanted to experience it. So we need to get you in a real desire and stop focusing on the money as the bridge to your desire. Money is just a vehicle. And money is like you could get to your desired destination in so many ways. I did this exercise once. I played along with another coach that they said, okay, you're going to fly from here. You want to go to Thailand. Let's think of as many ways as we can to get to Thailand without you buying a ticket. And the group of people was able to come up with 17 independent ways of getting to Thailand that did not involve buying a plane ticket themselves. So when we focus on the money, we get so stuck in this idea when I have the money, then I can have what I want. When I feel worthy, then I can have the money. And when I have the money, then I feel good. It just becomes this endless loop or trap. When in reality, true abundance comes from self-trust that whenever you need something, you can find a way to figure it out. So I love to ask this question because so many of us, again, think we know what we want, but what we want is safety, security, stability, independence, freedom, one of the seven things you can't manifest. So if you won $1 million today, what would you do with that money? But there's a couple stipulations. You cannot pay off debt. You cannot give it away. And you cannot invest it in a retirement account. You can't put it in savings. You can't put it in another account. So I'll give you a minute to think about it. What would you do with that money if you won $1 million today and you have to spend it in a week? And if you know exactly what you would do with that money, feel free to pop it in the chat. And I'll give you just a couple more seconds to think about it. Love it. Buy a European river cruise and a house. Book a European cruise and buy a house. Um, I love it. Book a trip with your family, maybe rent a villa in Italy for a month. Fabulous. And these are things, especially vacation. That's why it's so easy, oftentimes, to man it when you focus on the vacation and the adventure and what the vacation is going to get you. By that, I mean, why do you like to travel? For me, I like to travel because travel means adventure. But I don't need to travel anywhere to be able to adventure. I can adventure in my own backyard. I can go explore because what adventure means to me is experiencing new things I've never experienced before. So every time I go to a new restaurant, I hike a new trail, I go visit a new business or do a new activity, I am adventuring. All right. Buy a space in Costa Rica, see a spiritual coach in Santa Monica, splurge on a luxury beach space, or yeah, yes, with spa and food. Love it. Amazing. So the whole point of this exercise is this is truly the $1 million question. However, you just answered this question, that's what you really, really want. And oh, yes, redo your closets in your condo and get a fabulous capsule wardrobe. Absolutely. And so the reason why is an illusion is money, we think money is going to help us get one of these seven things, but here is a list of seven things that you can never manifest because if the sheer act of you wanting them means that you're coming from scarcity. If you had these things already, you wouldn't want more of them in your life. And so I'm going to list these off pretty quick and then give you a minute to write them down or take a picture. The seven things you cannot manifest are comfort, control, freedom, independence, safety, stability, and security. And I'll give you just a minute to either jot those down or And safety, stability, security are just three different ways to say the same thing. And safety is a reaction to feeling out of control. So if I actually acknowledged how free I am in my life, I wouldn't want more freedom. When I feel comfortable, I don't yearn for more comfort in my life. But the sheer act of us wanting these seven things is the number one thing that prevents us from having them because you have to feel the emotion. You have to feel free to receive freedom. You have to be it first to see it in your life. All right. So the number two thing, and these are not in any particular order, but we think that we need money first. We are convinced that before we can ever get what we want, we have to receive the money before that. And I promise you can get creative and find a way to have it now. That's what I talked about with travel is I got clear in what travel meant to me, which is adventure. And what does adventure mean to me and why do I like it? It's new experiences. And why do I like it is because I like to experience new fun things. I love to explore. And so, because now I know what that is important to me about travel, if I don't have the budget to travel internationally right now, I can find a way to adventure every week, every month we can go on a new adventure if that's what's important to you. If what you want is more connection in your life, you can find a way to connect with people now. And like, let's say, for example, what you want is more romantic love. Well, because love is just a part of connection, you can connect with the barista at your coffee shop for just a moment, and you're increasing the amount of love you have in your life for just a moment. If you want more romantic love, you can practice loving yourself. And so I guarantee no matter what it is that you want, if it's a real desire, you can find a way to have it now before you receive the money. And the reason it's important to get creative and find a way to have it now is you could spend the rest of your life chasing the money instead of chasing your dreams. So if you could spend even a fraction of the energy that you do chasing after money and put that energy directly into what you wanted to do, it'll find a way to show up. And I mentioned how I made that extra like $20,000 in 8 months. I was using a lot of the practices that I'll share with you as a gift for attending today or watching the recording. But also, I practiced because what I wanted to do for when I looked at Greece and the whole experience, I wanted ease, I wanted presence, I wanted adventure. So I practiced having ease in my everyday life. We went on weekly adventures to explore new trails or new places. And so in that way, instead of focusing on trying to make the money and when I make the money, then I can book my trip. I just focused on how can I create presence and ease and adventure in my everyday life. And I put all of my focus on creating directly what I wanted. And then the money just appeared to make it happen because I was being in the energy and the emotions of what I wanted to experience. All right. Reason number three that we block ourselves from receiving more abundance is we don't have the identity of a wealthy person. And if you identified as wealthy or rich, you would receive more abundance. And what's so interesting is, and this is another illusion around money of making us safe or feel wealthy. I know some really wealthy people. In fact, I know I was having a conversation with somebody this weekend that is extremely wealthy and very much stuck in scarcity mindset and says things like, oh, I can't afford to get guacamole on my Chipotle burrito. And yet this person has $65,000 in a savings account and $100,000 in retirement, and they're significantly younger than I am, and yet they're concerned about getting guacamole on a burrito. So just because you have wealth doesn't mean you have a wealthy mindset. And when you can identify as somebody who has that, you automatically attract it. So going back to the idea of what is it you want to create with money, where do you have wealth in your life right now? Where do you have abundance in your life right now? And there is, again, this comes in the tip sheet I'll send you at the end. There's an abundance already gratitude practice, which, by the way, is not a mental gratitude practice. It is an emotionally driven practice where you think about, I am so grateful for the abundance of air that I have right now. Air is the number one thing you need to survive. You can't even survive 3 minutes without air. And yet you've never once had to worry about whether or not that abundance will be there for you. And so like just feeling into the like the gratitude for that unlimited abundance. And I'm just going to list off a bunch of things. But again, this practice is not, it's not a thinking exercise. It's a feeling the gratitude for the abundance you already have exercise. You have an abundance of air, fresh water. You have an abundance of places to connect with people in person and online. You have an abundance of love from your friends, your pets, your family. You have an abundance of love for your friends, your pets, your family. You have an abundance of opportunities. You have an abundance of access to food. You have an abundance of access to nature. Some people that live in the city, it might be a little bit harder, a little bit longer to get to, but I guarantee you have abundant access to nature. We live in a naturally abundant universe. So how can you find and focus on where you already have abundance now? Yes, exactly. We traveled thousands of miles today and didn't fly off the earth. Yeah, every time I'm having a bad day, I just remind myself that I am on a rock hurtling through space and and I'm still hanging on. That's why I find that very helpful. So focusing on where you have what you want right now. There's also an abundance tracking sheet, which is a really powerful tool because it tricks your brain's filter into shifting. Because we talked about we're so hyper focused on too much money going out and not enough money coming in. So how we change our brain's filter is by stacking evidence that we are already receiving abundantly. And when we provide our brain with evidence that we are receiving abundance, even if it's in the form of a penny found on the sidewalk, when you can show your brain evidence you are receiving, then that's a new belief that you're creating, and your reticular activating system only shows you what you believe. So in this way, we can reprogram our brains. And so I really recommend tracking and celebrating every penny that you get. And when you're tracking abundance, it's not just the money that you're receiving, it's also gifts and discounts and unexpected surprises. Like you go to Coffee Connect and somebody buys you coffee. I track that as abundance because that is proof that I am receiving. And remember, when we focus just on the money, that becomes the illusion that we need the money to buy the coffee. What if I could just receive the coffee directly? So it includes all of our gifts that we're receiving and any discounts or things like that. And the reason I have this picture of a boat is a really powerful story I heard from my mentor many years ago. He is a high level, I mean, he's worked like directly with Tony Robbins and all these things. So he's a high level mentor. And this very successful entrepreneur hired him because he really wanted to buy a $250,000 boat. and he kept getting stuck. And this highly successful entrepreneur had already bought a lake house in his dream location. And what he wanted was this boat. But he found every time he tried to manifest the money to the boat, he would get really close to having the down payment and something would happen and he would lose all the money and he would make it back and then he would lose it. And he was oscillating back and forth. He would make money and then lose money, make money and then lose money. And after 10 years, he's like, I just want this boat. So he hired my mentor. Anyways, my mentor listened to this whole story and said, oh, great. I know exactly how to solve this. Go buy a kayak today. And the guy's like, I don't want a kayak. I want this $250,000 speedboat. And my mentor lovingly said, shut up and buy a kayak. Because what he really wanted was to be on the water. He wanted to be a boat person. And so what was accessible to him in that moment was to buy a kayak. But once he created the identity of somebody who is a boat owner on this lake and spends a lot of time on the water because he went out on his ended up going out on his kayak every day because what he wanted is not the boat. What he wanted was to be on the water. Once he had the identity of a person that is a boat owner, he upgraded his kayak for a dinghy for a motorboat, and excuse me because I don't know different boat sizes, but basically he went from a $500 boat to a $2,000 boat to a $10,000 boat to a $50,000 boat to a $100,000 boat to a $250,000 boat in 18 months. But the key was he had the identity of a person that owns a boat. So his subconscious was no longer fighting him. So where can you create the identity that you already have what you want? And that's what we do with those practices. All right. Step number 4, or reason number 4, why we block ourselves from receiving abundance is we think money will change us. And this goes back to that biggest block I mentioned earlier. We try and fix ourselves. When we fix ourselves, then we can have the money. And when we have the money, then we can buy the dream home, whatever that is. But our number one biggest block on what prevents us from manifesting money is you are already manifesting money. You just manifest what you subconsciously believe you deserve, not what you consciously want. Let me say that again. You manifest the amount of money you believe subconsciously that you deserve, not what you consciously want. So we get the opportunity to upgrade your belief system to allow you to receive more. And again, as long as we keep turning all of our mistakes back onto ourselves and thinking that there's something wrong with us that needs to be fixed, that keeps us spinning. We could spend the rest of our life trying to fix ourselves instead of going for our dreams. And the reason this is we're so focused on the problems, we're so focused on what's wrong with us, instead of focusing on our superpowers, instead of focusing on where we feel great in our lives, instead of focusing on what we want. So we create this infinite problem loop, and we have to solve this infinite unsolvable problem loop before we can have the money. So what if you could just focus on directly on what you want to create? So, in summary, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions and to dig into this a little bit more, how to reprogram your brain is figure out what you really want. And that's a real desire. And it gets so tricky and so complicated because even when you're talking about manifesting your dream home, when you dig into why you want that, your dream home could actually be so you feel safe, and you can't manifest safety. So you will never, as long as your dream home is associated with feeling safe, you'll never be able to manifest that dream home. So, like I said, this is step number 1 is actually the hardest step, getting crystal clear in your heart's deepest desire. And again, it's not a reaction to anything you don't want. It's just, what is your heart calling you? So I do this with a vision workshop where we go through the subconscious mind, past the subconscious mind, to actually directly tap into your heart's deepest desire. If you're curious and digging into that, I'm happy to share resources on my vision workshop. You can just put vision workshop in the chat. And after you know what you want, you program your brain to find it in your life now. Because I guarantee, just like we talked about, even when you're hyper focused on too much money coming out and not enough money coming in, you're still receiving, you're still living in this abundant universe. And so, how can you reprogram your brain to find in your life right now everything it is that you actually want? And we do that by gathering the evidence that it's already happening for us. And you can notice the synchronicities in your life. Like, have you ever, like, the silly little things like this tend to happen to me a lot, but I also look for them. So I allow these things to happen in my filter. I guarantee synchronicities are happening in your life as well. Whether you see them or not is just what is your brain's filter tuned to. But there was this amazing time where I was on the beach in Mexico and I looked back at the bar. I was like, I really want a margarita, but I'm looking at that bar is absolutely packed. There's way too many people, and I'll just wait it out or whatever. And I'm just sitting there on the beach enjoying it. And the waiter walks up and talks to the person next to me and says, "Oh, here's your margarita." And they're like, "Oh, I had ordered a mojito." So the waiter literally turns around and is like, because the person, and he was like, "Well, do you want the margarita?" They were like, "No." And so waiter literally turned around and said, "Do you want a margarita?" I was like, "That'd be great, thanks." So it's amazing. These synchronicities are happening to us all the time. Can you tune your brain's filter in to find them? And step number three is improve your relationship to money. We often focus, and the language we use around money is really important. So if there's one thing you learn from this presentation, I hope it's this. Please never say the phrase ever again, "I can't afford that," because you're declaring out loud that you won't ever be able to afford that. Instead, shift your language to say, "I'm choosing not to invest in that right now." Even if the reason why you're choosing not to invest in that right now is because you don't have the money, simply changing your language around money, and that's how you think inside your head and the words you speak around money, upgrades your attitude and your gratitude to money. Because if money was a person, how do you treat it? How do you talk about it? How do you think about it? Maybe take a minute and jot down how you relate to money and how you talk about it. Because we often relate to money as saying it's not enough. And I used to find myself saying money would show up, I'm like, well, that's great, but it's not. I'd find a penny on the sidewalk. And instead of celebrating the proof that I'm receiving more abundance, I would say, well, that's not enough. Well, if you were in a relationship with somebody that just kept telling you that you were not enough, would you want to come around? Probably not. And money is actually the second longest standing relationship in your life. Because even when you're in utero, you are being programmed around money. Whatever your parents' frequency and emotions are around money, you're being bathed in it in utero. So you experience a relationship with money from the minute you're conceived to the minute you die, which is the longest standing relationship in our life next to ourselves. And so why not treat money as instead of treating money as like a deadbeat sibling that shows up and mooches off of you and never contributes or doesn't contribute enough, why not reprogram your brain to focus as and see money as like a long lost lover or your best friend and increase your attitude and gratitude? And as a gift for attending today, I actually have a fun little process around this. There's a neuroscience process to improve your relationship with money. And it permanently upgrades your relationship with money. It's an NLP process called perceptual shift, where you actually experience and notice a personification of money and have a heart to heart with it. And it's a really, really neat process. It's like a 25 or 30-minute recording, and you're just automatically going to get the recording of this NLP perceptual shift and the recording of this webinar. You'll automatically get it either later today or tomorrow. And this simply by upgrading your relationship with money, you're releasing old beliefs, thoughts, and emotions around money that are no longer serving you, that are not in alignment with where you're going anymore. And so the result is it changes how you think and feel about money. So I already said this, you'll get a recording. So with that, I appreciate all of your time, and I have an invitation if you're curious. I would love to invite you to a 30-minute manifesting machine call. This is a free opportunity to just upgrade your identity, maybe install an identity as a wealthy person, program your brain, shift how you orient to money, and increase your emotions around money. And again, I have very limited free spots. So take a minute to scan this QR code. I can also drop a link in the chat. There's limited spots available, so please sign up before February 28th, before this offer is over. And so with that, Tina, I would love to answer your question.
Yes, wow, you're amazing
Oh,
and
thank you.
delightful. I love this. So I loved your example of the gentleman that really didn't, it was more, he wanted to be on water than be on a boat or be an owner of a bigger boat, right? Like, so he
Mhm.
started that identity piece. So my question is, um, I live in the Midwest in Omaha, Nebraska, and I love beach and warm weather. I'm curious, like, because I'm the one that put, a space in Costa Rica. I love that space. I love that vibe, whatever. I would love your insight of what I really realized. It's like, oh, I love beach and warmer weather. I want access to beach. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that in terms of that shift when beaches, like, do I get a pile of sand and put it in my apartment? And like, I don't know. I'm just because I loved your breakdown of I'm very similar to you. It's all about I love to travel. What do I really love? Adventure. Why do I love venture? I love experiences that are new and novel. My body, my vibe, I love that. So I would love
Mhm.
your insight about that.
So, what is the warmth in the beach? What are the emotions that you're feeling when you're at the beach?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel cozy and just so fully in nature and present and a softness, I guess. I don't know, that's the best way, like a peace.
Mhm.
There's something I love the sound of water, like nature's water, like the waves, and then the grounding. Like I love being able to ground every day. And when it's like 20 degrees or lower and cold, it's really hard to stand outside and be barefoot. I
Mhm.
love being barefoot and having that ability to do that.
Yeah. So highly recommend getting a grounding mat because there is actually and I recommend the ones at earthing.com. They're the
Oh, I have
original.
shoes from them. Awesome.
Yeah, they're the original grounding movement people. But the answer to how you create the vibe of having the beach and the warmth is how do you find peace in your everyday life? How do you find presence and softness? How do you ground every day? Like how do you connect with and live in the state of those emotions? Because it's not the beach that's doing it for you. It's you allow yourself to be and to step into those emotions. You just give yourself license to do it sometimes, but you can give yourself a license to do it all the time. And grounding is super important. I'm very much connected to water. I go to hot springs all the time. Even when you're not accessible to go to hot springs, soaking in salt baths is super grounding and super supportive for your nervous system and allows you to be present and peaceful and soft within yourself. So I guess my point is you can find a way to experience those emotions in your everyday life. And then you're living in a place of peace and ease and grounded and connected to nature and softness. And so you don't need the beach to give that to you.
Beautiful.
Does that kind of
Thank you.
make sense?
Totally. Thank
Amazing. My pleasure. My pleasure. Andrea.
I don't have a question so much as just a realization that I got from you. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to do the European River Cruise, and I've been mildly obsessed by it. And then when you were talking, I realized, okay, my husband and I have to stop making this joke about I don't want to leave the house. Like this is our,
Mm.
our joke, ongoing joke. Oh my God, I have to leave the house. Oh my God, I'm going to be around people. And it's like that's the opposite of what I've been saying I want. So I need to stop saying that and go, oh, I get to leave the house. Oh, I get to see people so that I can manifest this thing. So thank you. Like I've just been saying the opposite of what I say I want. So
Yeah,
that
and that's why I love to support people in this because we could go on and on and on in all of the ways that we are actively contradicting ourselves to receive what we want. And it's so interesting is our nervous system. craves more of the frequency and the energy that it's in. And so, for example, I'm a high energy person, but I'm stuck in a little bit of fight or flight all the time. And this is something I'm actively working on. But my nervous system craves caffeine and other things that stimulate me because that keeps me where I am. And where I am, because I've survived it this long, is safe. And so, my greatest medicine at this moment in my life, because I love people and I love going out and I'm like a busy all the time kind of person. My greatest medicine is silence, stillness, alone time. Do you know how uncomfortable those are for me? I almost like want to crawl out of my skin because it's not something I'm used to. And so, in that way, but it's in alignment with what I actually desire, which is a lot more ease in my life. And it might not be ease in the practices in the beginning, but by allowing myself, I know that spending time in stillness and silence is a bridge to having more ease in my life. I know that having more space in my calendar gives me what I want. So in doing that, I get the opportunity to be comfortable being uncomfortable, stepping into my greatest medicine, which again, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, or in his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, that our body becomes physically addicted to the neuropeptides of emotions. So if we've been sad for a long, like let's or processing lots of grief or whatever that is, we actually, when even though the stimulus, like let's say, somebody dies, that's a legitimate reason to be sad and feel grief. But if we've been in this place of sadness for an extended period of time, our emotions, like that we're so used to bathing in the chemicals of sadness, that our body will actually hijack us and start convincing our brain to look for things that make us sad. And so in that way, we get to upgrade all of, and that's why I like to use neuroscience, because we can just effortlessly shed these things, reprogram the emotions that your body is searching out, release and relax your nervous system so we can step into this new greatest chapter. But I love that awareness, Andrea. That's amazing. Awesome. And I see Tina, you asked about the coupon code. There's no coupon code. It should just be free. If you hit whatever, there's no payment associated with it. So let
Oh,
me know
okay,
if you.
because it says package, gift, or coupon code.
Yeah, so that's just a box that lives there. But if you just
Gotcha.
hit
Okay, thank
submit,
you.
yeah, it's all just automatically free. So amazing. Um, I love it. So amazing. Does anybody else have any other questions or thoughts or reflections?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It was, so I love this work that you're teaching, Kitty, and you do it in such a clear way. I just loved this last hour. So thank you
Hmm.
very much. Um, it's that notion of, oh, sorry. It's the notion of what you of want you can't manifest because then that is lack. Like, oh, I want the love of my life. Well, then that makes it more difficult when I'm thinking of it like that.
Hmm.
So it's this, I've been pondering the detached, like being detached and being just happy with me and not like, oh, is this guy gonna like me? No, am I gonna like this guy? That kind of
Hmm.
switch. So is that kind of and I forget which, I was gonna ask, like, is the detached another way of one of the things that you were just talking about? Am I onto something here?
Absolutely. So when you want to manifest something, you have to be the same person whether you get it or not. And that's the thing is we think that getting, and I used money, but let's use the example of a partner. It doesn't really matter because it's all the same principles. We think that our life, and whether it's conscious or subconscious, we think our life will be different when we get that thing we want. But in reality, it's exactly the same. And you know what's really fascinating is one of the emptiest days of my life is the day after I became a best-selling author. Because even though I do this work, I published a book, I don't know, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. And I worked really hard and I became a best-selling author within a week. And then but I didn't realize until I woke up the next day that I had convinced myself that becoming a best-selling author meant I was an expert and it would increase my confidence and all these things. And I woke up the next day and I was exactly the same person I was. And I was like, oh, but I worked so hard to get my expert status and my confidence. So we don't realize that unconsciously we think our life will change when we receive this thing that we want. And so as long as as long as any part about us is going to change at all, we can't receive that thing because it's not safe to change. So we need to detach from the outcome and know that our life is perfect whether we get that thing we want or not. It's exactly the same. There is no difference. So yeah, being detached from the outcome 100%. And it just truly boils down to how can we find if what we want a partnership is connection and love. How do you give yourself love? How do you show more love and share more love in the world? Like I said, you can share love like non-romantically with the barista. Like you can always give away love. You can always give away connection. You can find ways to connect in your life if that's what you're craving. And so once you detach from the idea that you even need a partner or money or whatever that is, and you're like, that would be great, but my life rocks without it. That's when you can allow yourselves to receive on a greater level. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for that question. And I also appreciated your question. I put it in the chat. But yeah, everyone is welcome to book one of these calls. So if you're curious and want to talk to me about how I can support you in upgrading your belief system, upgrading your identity around money, I'm happy to share with you the tools, the tips, the wisdom. Yay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you have a fabulous day and stay tuned. I'll send you all of these recordings and stuff later and other opportunities to join me and come learn some more. Thanks.